Hello everyone, and welcome to the VIA Pioneer Speaker Series. I'm very excited to have Megan Dalla Camina here as our presenter. And before I introduce Megan, let me just go over a couple housekeeping items from the VIA Institute end. We wanted to alert you to the fact that VIA is finally going to be releasing its long-awaited VIA team report, as well as a VIA team workshop. And both of these are going to be coming up very soon, later this month. And on the slide in front of you here, you can see that the VIA team workshop starts June 18th, and it will be about working with teams and how to best integrate character strengths with the team approach. And also there will be some information and helpful hints and examples using the VIA team report too. So the two will be tied together. So I wanted just to let all of you know about that, because I figured that a lot of the people on this call are very interested in the business theme and interested in consulting work with strengths and coaching work with strengths and even leadership work with strengths. And so Megan will be talking quite a bit more about working with strengths from a leadership standpoint, and so I thought you might be interested in this team workshop and report coming up here. So I want to just kind of remind everybody that this series, VIA Pioneer Speaker Series, features some of the greatest practitioners actually in the world that are leading the charge, that are leading the way with character strengths applications. And so Megan certainly fits that description as well, and is a true pioneer with character strengths, and I'm very excited to introduce her to you. So Megan is the Director of Strategy for IBM Australia, and that includes a number of responsibilities, including organizational culture and change and gender diversity. And for more than 16 years, she's driven strategies for billion-dollar corporations in Australia and Asia and the United States in business strategy and marketing and communications and leadership and organizational culture and on and on. And she has a significant background in business and positive psychology and wellness, and she's done a lot of work as a leading advocate for women and serving on boards and as executive sponsor for women for many years. And she's won Employer of the Marketing Employer of the Year and a number of other awards. And so without going on and on, let me go ahead and turn the experience over to Megan, who will actually be speaking to us about VIA character strengths and leadership today. And one final thing to let you know, that if you have any questions, then please email me at ryan@viacharacter.org, and I'll do my best to ask Megan and pose those questions to Megan throughout the talk here. So again, ryan@viacharacter.org. And without further ado, I want to welcome you, Megan. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you very much for having me. It's a great privilege to be here and share the work that we've been doing in IBM in this space. So thank you very much, and good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are. Okay, so what I thought I'd do today, this is a discussion hour, so I would love it to be interactive. And as Ryan said, send through your questions, and really happy to take questions as we go through. You don't need to wait to the end, so if anything comes up for you as we go through, please just send it through and we'll have some discussion. So what I thought I'd do with the agenda slide today is take you through Positive Leadership, which is the program that we've built at IBM, and the background to that, and why we've done it, and what it looks like. I thought I would take you through how we're applying that and what our strategy is, through building our executive capability, to extending the learning through our management structure, to embedding the program, which is where we're currently at. I'll talk to you about our VIA strength workshops that we've done, and very importantly, cover some of the obstacles that we've faced and what some of the success factors are that I think are really important for anyone embarking on this journey. So to start with, just a little bit of background around my personal association with VIA and positive psychology, and how I came to be the executive sponsor of the program. As Ryan said, I am the Director of Strategy, so I'm responsible for both the short and long-term business strategy for IBM. And one of the key factors that feeds into that, obviously, is our people and the culture and engagement of our organisation. And back in 2010, I was looking for ways to improve our morale, improve our engagement as an ongoing way to drive the growth in our business. And through a lot of the work and studies that I've done external to IBM around positive psychology, around looking at things like VIA, I thought it would be a great tool to build a new leadership program for the new wave of leadership that we were seeing that we call positive leadership. So I will take you through what the elements of that look like, and had many elements, but I will focus in on the strengths, obviously, as that's what we're here to talk about today. So in terms of why we went down this path, as I said, we built a new leadership program for IBM in Australia and New Zealand in 2010. And we first introduced the VIA character strengths as part of this program. As I said, we called it positive leadership because it synthesized for us, the material in the fields of positive psychology, appreciative inquiry, positive organizational scholarship, which I've done a lot of work in, and authentic leadership, and brought all of that together with the latest in the fields of neuroscience into an approach that we thought was applicable to coaching and leadership development in our business. So as I said, the goal of the overall program was to increase employee engagement and performance. And to do this, we wanted to tap into the overwhelming research that I'm sure you're all familiar with that had emerged at the time from positive psych and the related fields, which links strengths use and other positive psychology interventions into better outcomes for the business, like better performance, greater engagement, higher levels of energy and vitality, less stress and greater resilience. And these, for us as a high-performance business, driving a very aggressive growth strategy, which we continue to do, are of increasing and critical importance in our business. So that's the business context, and that's the background in terms of why we went down this path. So where did we start? We started with our senior leadership team, which is called our General Management Leadership Team, so I'll refer to that as the GMLT. And the first stage of our overall program was to build executive capability. So we wanted to provide our senior businesses with the tools and resources to start by enhancing their own leadership capability, looking at their personal resiliency, and building a positive mindset, because we knew that it would enable them to provide greater support for their teams and have greater impact in the business. And I also knew when I brought this in and developed it that getting this team on board, these are my peers, we all report into the CEO, that getting this group on board was crucial to the success of the overall program and was absolutely critical to driving any behaviour change in the business. So the GMLT were offered the program in the form of a 2-day face-to-face session in 2 of our main locations in Melbourne and Sydney. And they also had the opportunity to take part in one-on-one coaching sessions to embed any of the learning that they got as they went through. We also took this, so that was the top 25 leaders. We also took it to our top 100 next level leaders, which is our upgraded leadership team. And they offered the program in the form of 6 2-hour face-to-face sessions over 6 months. So the GMLT had this intensive sessions, face-to-face plus coaching. The ILT had a more extended sessions over 6 months, but the same content. So let me talk to you about the content, and then I'll zone in on the strengths portion. So the content came in 5 overall areas. We did an introduction to positive leadership, so positive psychology and what the organisational relevance of that was. We looked at appreciative inquiry. We looked at neuroplasticity, focus and attention, and we looked at the mind-body connection. So that was the first part. The second part was all around the strengths. So how do you play to strengths, and what is strengths-based leadership? So looking at things like satisfaction versus pleasure, of course looking at the VIA signature strengths, and we had some tools in there around exercises to look at that, and we talked about appreciative coaching. The third session was around upward spirals, so upward and downward spirals, positivity ratios, resistance versus resilience, and really zoning in on how to build upward spirals and how to be a high impact leader. The fourth session was around mind, which we called Mind the Gap, and this was around the science and success of thriving as a leader, focus and attention, stress versus challenge, and mindfulness. And we had Dr. Craig Hassard, who's a world expert in mindfulness, many of you may be familiar with, come in and do some work with us on that session. And then the fifth area was around authentic leadership, motivation, skill and talent, character versus capability, finding your sweet spot and intentions. We did all of this with the help of an external firm called Positive Leadership in Australia, who did a phenomenal job helping us introduce this into the business. So let me just talk about strengths in this context. So of course the VIA Signature Strength Survey was a major component of our program, and it was really the base fundamental component of the work that we've done in the past and the work that we continue to do. And strengths is always our first foundational module of any of our positive leadership work that we're doing. So we had all of our executives complete the VIA online survey, and then we worked through with them exercises to help them identify, understand and build their strengths. Positive Leadership, the group that we worked with in Australia, also had these fantastic VIA strengths cards that they developed, that Barbara and Jan had developed, and they were also provided for each of the executives to really help them further understand and embed the tool of the VIA Strength Survey. So in terms of this aspect of the development with our executives, which was 2010, we had incredible quality back from those who attended the program. And you can imagine when you're looking at a general management level group of people, I say that we had, the usual change model of a third, and a third. We had a third who jumped straight on board, understood why strength was important, and got straight into it, and I called them my coalition of the willing. We had the middle, third that were a little bit on the fence, weren't quite sure, but were happy to go along and see what happened and, actively participate. And then we had the disengaged third, the third of the team that really weren't interested, very set in their ways, and weren't really that interested. And that shifted quite significantly, and I'll talk about that as we go through. So in terms of the feedback from this first round, and there's lots of feedback I'll give you as we go through this discussion, 100% of our executives felt that the program, the theories and the research would be of benefit to both themselves and to other groups within our business. And you can, just to give you a picture of our size, I mean, IBM, of course, as you would know, is, 400,000 plus people in 160 countries around the world. In Australia and New Zealand, we have over 15,000 employees. So, it's a sizable business. 99% of our respondents thought there was value in continuing the type of program down throughout our management layers. And just to give you a sense of some of the quotes that we had coming back, and again, this is from our executive team, quote, out of all the management development stuff we have done, this was innovative and really good thinking. It's one of the best things I've done in a long while. Quote, IBM is often focused on fixing problems, which is great, but if we wish to unlock the potential of our people, positive leadership is the direction we must go in. I believe this is one of the most valuable programs I have undertaken in 14 years in IBM. And this one, I appreciated the opportunity to take time out each month and examine how I'm currently leading and steps I can take to capitalise on my strengths. Without this time, I would certainly not have learnt as much on what is a vital topic for leaders and managers. So that just gives you a little bit of sense, and we've got dozens and dozens of quotes from qualitative research that we've done that just gives you a sense for the type of feedback that we've been getting from our senior team. So Ryan, unless there's questions, I'll keep going through. Last year, the second year of our program, we extended. Sorry, Ryan.
Oh, yeah. I just was going to ask you a couple questions at this point. Could you give a little bit of detail on when you said that you help the individuals to identify, understand, and build their character strengths? I don't know if you're planning on saying more about that, but I know that sometimes working with the VIA and working with strengths is brand new to people in the business world and to employees, and they never even heard of this concept before. Do you break that down? Like how do you after they take the VIA survey, so that helps them to start to identify, and then how do you help them to kind of deepen their understanding and building of the character strengths?
Yeah, so I will go through that if we can just hold that thought, and I absolutely will get into that. And if I don't go where you want me to, then I'll definitely come back to it.
Great.
Yeah. Was there any? You said you had a couple of questions. Was there another question?
And then I missed what you had noted, breaking the groups down into the different thirds. A third understood it right away. A third were on the fence. Was the other third sort of a resistant group? I missed what you had said there.
The last third group?
Yes.
So it was the Coalition of the Willing who jumped straight on board and got it and couldn't get enough of it. The middle third who weren't quite sure but engaged and went on the journey with us. And then the bottom third who were actively disengaged. Okay, and it'd be great to, how do you kind of connect with that actively disengaged group? Is that another thing you'll be covering later? Yeah, well, let me talk about that a little bit now, and then it is in my successes and learnings. But look, for that actively disengaged group, and this is, as you said at the beginning, I'm responsible for organisational culture and change as well. And this is, this is a known phenomenon when you're going through a change process. You're not going to get everybody. If you get 2/3 or a third, you're doing really well. When we drive a change program like this in an organisational context. So, I had a couple of strategies. There were a couple of people in the team that I knew that we don't want to get on board. They long time IBM executives. And, I knew that I could spend all of my time and effort on those people to try and get them on board, and I probably would never get there. But there were the majority of that third of actively disengaged who I really did believe that with the right approach, I could get, move up into that second third group of the engaged but maybe a little unsure. So I worked on those people, at the general management level, through the coaching work that we did, through having one-on-one discussions with them because I'm a subject matter expert. I could have those discussions and address the areas that they just didn't want to engage and the reasons behind that, and then feeding them material, feeding them examples, talking about what the Coalition of the Willing were doing, and starting to see that behaviour become the tipping point for the team over the period of the last sort of 12 to 18 months has brought probably 90% of those people along on the journey. And one of the people who was the biggest detractors from the program is now one of the biggest advocates for the program. So look, I think it varies depending on how big is your group. Overall, how big is the group that is disengaged? Who are the people in that group who you really need to get on board because they're influencers in your organisation or in the team that you're trying to drive behavioural change? And then what are the different strategies, to get those people to engage? And who are the other influencers who can help you do that? So that was the approach that I took, and I took a similar approach with the integrated leadership team, the next 100 leaders. But I think it's important to note, there's always going to be people who sit on the sideline. In a big organisation, even in a small organisation, in a team, I don't know if you ever get to that point where you have 100% actively engaged people in a change program when you're talking about behavioural change. They might be passively engaged, or you might think that they're engaged, but, you know, our focus was really on how do you build that coalition of the willing, how do you get more people, you know, up that line so that you can get to the tipping point in the type of behaviour that you want to see in the business, and that's what we've gotten to. We've gotten to that tipping point, and I've found that when you get there, more people will come along for the ride because it is now the norm of behaviour.
I see. Yeah, those are some great strategies. When there is an actively disengaged individual, do you tend to pull them out individually and do some sort of one-on-one coaching to kind of do the strategy you said of answering the questions and feeding them information and research and whatnot, or do you tend to try to process it more as a group? If it's just one, I mean, if it's the whole group, obviously you might process it with the whole group. But do you tend to take more of a unilateral approach, more individual or more group, or did it always vary by the situation?
Yeah, look, it varies by the situation, but certainly for our executives, my peers, I took a one-on-one approach. And then I also looked at the influencers. So, you know, we had, you know, a couple of our very high-profile executives were very engaged in the program. You know, so having them talk about their experiences and, you know, where their wins, where they're having success with the change, was very influential. So I think you need to look at what those lever points are to get those people on board. And then when it's a bigger group, like our top 100, you know, it's more of a, certainly there are some influencers in that group that you really need to get on board, so you take a one-on-one approach with them. But for others, you know, it's just finding how to bring them into the conversation, let them hear the stories, you know, feed them some more information, and then get to them one-on-one, either yourself or through, you know, my team, or through other executives as possible.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay. So thanks. They were great, really great and important questions. Thank you, Ryan. I'll keep going through so that we don't run out of time. And again, happy to stop and take questions. So what we did last year was we extended the program to all of our managers. So we have 1,400 managers in our business in Australia and New Zealand, and they really are the key to driving, you know, the behaviours that we want to see for our 15,000 people. So our strategy last year was to extend the learning, you know, to all people managers. So again, just briefly, you know, we did this program in 3 modules. The first module, as I said, everything is foundational around strengths for strengths-based leadership, and, you know, similar content to what we've done with the executives. So giving them an introduction to positive psychology, giving them an introduction to the strengths movement, which, as we all know, has been around for, you know, for decades. Looking at the benefits of focusing on strengths. We introduced the VIA tool, of course, and began building on their awareness of, you know, signature strengths and exploring the ways that they could apply them to their role as a manager. And I'll come back to that because it's a really important point. Just in terms of logistics, because, you know, you can imagine we've got 1,400 managers spread over Australia and New Zealand, very diverse geographical spread of people, and people at client sites and at, you know, working in off-site locations. So all of the managers who attended this module got the link to the Big Institute to take the survey, and then they brought the printout of that survey with their strengths to the face-to-face sessions. They didn't get the strengths cards and packs because we did this manager program in-house, you know, internally, and built all of our own intellectual property around the modules. And part of that was building a VIA strengths booklet that my team built, looking at, you know, strengths, how to apply strengths, the shadow side of strengths, etc. And again, I'll come back to that, Ryan, to your question. Just so that you're aware, the other 2 modules in our manager development program, the second one was mindset. So we looked at things like learned optimism, fixed and growth mindsets, and all of Carol Dweck's amazing work. You know, Barb's work around broaden and build theory, positive emotions, positivity ratios, and active constructive responding. So all of those aspects around mindset. And the third module that we built was around energy and attention. So, a lot of Tony Schwartz's work, managing energy rather than time, sleep, exercise and nutrition, emotional contagion theory, positive interactions, and then a whole piece of work around attention, managing distractions, being present, mindfulness, flow, building positive habits. So that just gives you a sense of, strengths is the first module, mindset is the second module, energy and attention is the third module. We did these sessions in the form of classroom training, and we did around 54 sessions from memory across 9 different locations in Australia and New Zealand. So we did half-day training sessions for each module. After we did the modules, like the strengths module, we followed that up in 2 ways. We built an interactive toolkit that had all of the information that we covered, as well as articles, videos, links to the VIA site and the great tools that are there, so that people had an interactive way of engaging with the material after they had come to the face-to-face session. Because we didn't want people to just come to the session, walk away and not do anything, because we know that doesn't, it may be interesting, but it doesn't drive behavioural change. So they came to the session, they had this interactive toolkit, like the Strengths-Based Leadership Toolkit, and then we also followed up with coaching calls. So, we had coaching calls with hundreds and hundreds of managers on them, with, myself as the subject matter expert going through the content. We had executives and managers talking about their experience of using strengths and being a strengths-based leader and what that change actually looks like in practice, so that people could start to understand firsthand what this can look like, and then can take it away and work to embed it with their people. So that model has worked very well for us in terms of actually driving change, not just having people understand some new content. In terms of our reach, we had almost 700 managers attend our modules, and we got to about 57% of the population. In the first round, we didn't think we'd get that far, that much reach, so we were very happy with that reach to our manager population. And through the feedback that we've had, 92% of managers reported overall satisfaction with the program, and 80% of managers intended to apply the concepts that they had learnt. And we know from talking to our learning and development teams that the usual percentage of people saying that they can apply the concepts is around 30 to 40%. So to get 80% for these modules, particularly the strengths modules, was outstanding. We also wanted to go and look at actual change. So we went and did my organisational change and culture team, which has a number of organisational psychologists in it, went and did in-depth narrative qualitative interviews with participants. And we did dozens and dozens of these interviews to look at the changes that they've actually seen. And we've done this 6+ months after the actual program, and to look at the impact on them as individuals and what they've seen on their team. And the feedback that we had was that 85% of the managers actually made significant changes in how they managed their team as a result of the program and the learnings. We found that with the strengths module, although we did for individuals, what we found is that so many managers actually took the strengths-based leadership module back to their teams, and they did that more so than the other 2 modules. So there was something in the strengths module that really resonated for our managers as individuals and also as leaders. So many of them went back and conducted the strength session with their teams. They got their teams to go on and do the VIA survey, and they started looking at how they would coach their teams using strengths and have much more of a strengths-based approach, to their leadership. And I'll just again give you just a few quick quotes because I think the story where it really comes to life. One quote, all my strengths were around knowledge and wisdom. So I look for areas where I can be an expert and offer advice and my expertise. I am noticing that I'm experiencing less stress from taking this approach. And another one, after completing the strengths-based leadership module and using the toolkit, I went back to my team and we actually all did the strengths assessment together so we could understand one another's strengths. We put together a matrix of strengths and put it in the team room. We have more of an understanding of one another now, and I think we will draw upon the right people for the right areas now. Just one more quote. I have gone through the VIA strengths with my team, and I have also recommended to other people managers. One guy is really thriving on it. I am seeing this in his performance. I always wanted to be someone that my team could come to. I am seeing that now. So you can see there some of the examples of change, real change that we're seeing in the business, and this is very widespread. These are not isolated quotes. As I said, we have dozens and dozens and dozens of them, of managers telling us how they're actually applying it and the actual changes they're seeing in the behaviour of themselves as leaders and in their people as members of their team. Small results that we're very, very happy with. So just briefly to cover what we're doing this year, our goal this year is to further embed, to really embed the program. We need to maintain the interest and engagement from our senior executives, my peer group, and the executives that sit in the next level in the organisation to us. We need to keep the managers who've been on the journey with us on the path. And then we need to continually introduce new managers into the program. You know, as I said, we've got 1,400 managers. We've had more than 700 come through. This year, our goal is to get to all of the other 700 managers for all of the 3 modules that we're running again here, and then to get people on an extension program. So for our senior leaders, we're doing a refresher program that will heavily focus around strengths. For our managers, we're repeating what we did last year. We're also building an interactive online learning tool so that we can reach more managers. And we're also building an extension program. So for the managers who've graduated from the foundation program and want more, we're building an extension program. And just to give you a taste of that, for our strengths extension session, we're going to cover things like examples of how people are applying the strengths, as some of the examples that I've spoken about. How to spot strengths in others. You know, I think, you know, Ryan, to your question earlier, it can be quite ambiguous when you start to work with strengths. And, you know, to give people more tools, and some of the new tools that VIA are coming out with, you know, around the team-based reporting, et cetera, will be absolutely outstanding. And things like how to spot strengths is really important for our managers. So, you know, we're building that into our module. Learning how to conduct a strengths-based coaching conversation, whether that's a development discussion, or whether it's, you know, ongoing project work, whatever the discussions that you have with your team, how do you make that a strengths-based coaching conversation? You know, we know that in many organisations, you know, it's typically, the conversation typically goes, you're currently here, you need to be here, let's look at the gap and let's look at how we fix all of those weaknesses in you. We all know that's why we focus on strengths. But how do you actually do that in practice? How do you become a strengths-based coach? So we're going to have some intensive work around that. And then we're building a recommended approach to running a strengths team session using VIA. And we're already working, you know, with Ryan and Neil Mayerson, who are giving us a huge amount of support on the new work that's coming out of VIA, and then we're going to take that to our teams. So that's what our extension, some of the work in our extension program is going to look like. And then, you know, we will continue to embed. So we've built a positive leadership online community through proprietary software that we have in IBM, being, you know, partly a software company. So we've built that, you know, we're blogging, we're having online forum discussions, we're posting materials and really trying to build that community to continually build that coalition of the willing. We're rolling out materials and changing practices in ongoing business processes. So for our annual review development cycle, as I was saying, how do we build strength into that so that it becomes embedded in business as usual, not just something that we're doing on the side. We're doing strength interventions across the business. We have multiple business units and teams, so going into different organizations within IBM and doing strengths-based work. And then, of course, as I said, and you will understand from everything I've said, that the sharing of the stories of how to apply is incredibly important. Taking it from, as you were saying, Ryan, something that they may have heard of, may not have worked with, and are really not sure how to actually do something with it, and sharing those stories and these fantastic stories that we're building around the positive outcomes that we're driving in the business. So that's where we're up to this year with the program. My goal next year is that we roll this out to 15,000 employees in Australia and New Zealand. And the online interactive learning solution that we're building is going to be absolutely critical to do that. So
yeah, this is very, if I could just interrupt real quick, Megan, with the question, it's very exciting. I love hearing about all the different things that you're doing right now and the planning for the future. There's a question kind of building off of what you were talking about when you're discussing embedding this work with the managers and kind of really extending that learning. A lot of the stuff that you're doing this year, you mentioned the phrase helping to keep everybody on the path, keeping the managers on the path, and that seems to me to be one of the most crucial and challenging things, like with anything to do with any kind of change that somebody might be engaging in. Like we think of weight management and everything works for weight management, but the whole challenge is how do you maintain that over 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. And it seems like that's the case for, whether depression management, for dealing with almost anything. It's like, how are you going to maintain those changes? How are you going to really make sure that new good habit is kept? And what do you think about that with this whole keeping them on the path? What do you think is going to be most important, or what are you finding is most important for really all the great stuff you're teaching them, as well, especially with the strength stuff, for strengths maintenance?
Yeah, look, fantastic question. And it is. I mean, I think getting people on the path and getting an organization or anybody to want to change is incredibly difficult, whether it's, going on a diet or, getting mentally healthy or driving organizational change in a big company like IBM. Getting on the path is incredibly difficult. Keeping people on the path and keeping an organization moving towards the goal of, this beacon of hope that you have to set up for any change program to be successful is the big challenge. So for us, I think it falls into a number of different categories. Keeping the leaders engaged, keeping the CEO, and I'll talk about this in terms of success factors, actively engaged and driving is an incredibly important success factor. Keeping the executive team, who drives the behaviours and who models the behaviours that we want to see in the organisation is really important. So to do that, I bring in external speakers. We feed them new information. We share the stories, from their people, which is incredibly motivating for them. The change that their people are actually driving and the results that they're seeing is a key engagement factor for the executive team. And then for the managers, similarly, keeping the program fresh, sharing the stories, sharing the learnings, helping them understand why this matters. Big companies, there's so many programs, there's always change that's happening. Keeping something like this core to our strategy, which is, I guess, where my role is a little unique, because in so many cases these programs are run through an HR organisation. But having, the director of strategy, as the executive sponsor and owner of the program, very closely supported by the CEO, who's leading from the front on this, drives a very different message into the business. So keeping that relevance as to, this is where we're going from a business perspective. This is why, this is how our people need to behave, and this is where this fits into that journey. It's part of our key strategy of, of keeping this embedded and keeping people moving along the path. Does that answer your question?
Excellent. It does. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So look, I thought I'd just finish. We've got a few minutes left, and then, happy to take more questions with a couple of obstacles and a couple of critical success factors, which is really iterating what I've already said. So look, in terms of obstacles, this is a voluntary program in IBM. It's not a mandatory program. We're not big on mandatory. It's a voluntary program. So, driving high attendance, especially with our very dispersed workforce, people on client sites, people who work in remote locations, is a challenge and an obstacle to getting to 100% of our manager population. And that's led us to building things like this interactive online learning solution that will help us do that. And having, engaged leadership who engage their people to, to understand why this is important and why it is worthy of their time. People are so busy. Everybody, no matter where you work, everybody is so busy. So, getting people to commit and invest their time and their energy to embed on a major individual and organisational change process, is an obstacle to any program such as this. So, keeping that momentum moving and continually driving and supporting the program is incredibly important to get over that obstacle. And then, look, the third key obstacle is managing the cost. In any organisation, you're competing with so many other areas for funding. And running face-to-face development sessions across multiple locations across a number of years is very expensive. So, whilst we started with external facilitation and worked brilliantly with, with Jan and Barbara from Positive Leadership, for last year and this year and moving forward, we are driving this internally. And we have built our own intellectual property with our, organisational change and culture team, and that's helping us strike the balance. We do work with some external facilitators, but the bulk of the program we are doing internally. So managing the cost of any program like this is an obstacle that needs to be managed. So there are a couple of obstacles, not many, but the ones that are there are very important. In terms of success factors, you will have got this theme from me. Having strong backing from the CEO is critical. Again, as with any change program, whether you're driving change in diversity, strategy, culture, behaviour, business direction, the CEO must lead from the front, and so must the senior leadership team. So whether that's for getting approval for funding, getting support for the program, being advocates, demonstrating the right behaviours in the business, is the first, I think, the first critical success factor. I think a second one is, for us, a critical factor has been that the program has been seen to be cutting edge. Because it is still relatively new in the corporate space, all of this work that we're doing, because it has a very strong scientific research base, and because Australia really is a bit of a hotbed of positive psychology. When we've had Marty Seligman out here with Geelong Grammar, as people would know. We've had very prominent positive psychology leaders, in our market. There's a lot of media on positive psychology, so our people really see that we are on the cutting edge, and that's been really important to drive engagement. I think a critical success factor, having the professional association that we have with VIA, with Ryan and with Neil, has been absolutely fundamental to our success. Neil and I have built a fantastic relationship, and yourself, Ryan and Neil, brilliant supporters of the work that we're doing, constant form of support, I would say, and helping us take our work to the next level. So, I think that has been absolutely critical. And just two more things, for us having a dedicated team in org change and culture, 3 of which are registered psychologists, They have a passion for this. I mean, I have a passion for this, and I brought it into the business, but they share my passion. They are subject matter experts. We have, change consultants as well, only a few, but a number in the team. And they all get this. They all live it, they breathe it. They're up on all of the latest research, and that passion comes through everything that we do here. So, you don't need to have a dedicated team to have that, but you need to find people who are really passionate and want to drive the change in the business. And then the last thing was, we had a very strong face-to-face element to our program and continue to do so. And people love this. We do so much training online these days, and we will continue to do that. It is important so that we can get the reach that we need. But having people come together face-to-face for half a day, multiple times over the course of a program, we have found resonated incredibly strongly and has really helped us embed the learning for our people. So there's some success factors to consider. So Ryan, that's what I had, and I'm really happy to take any more questions or expand on anything that I spoke about that is of interest in the few minutes that we've got left, or go to any different place you might want to go to.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks so much, Megan. Let me ask you sort of a two-part question. The first part is, what is your definition for leadership as you apply it in the work that you've talked about here today? And then the second part is there any particular leadership theory that I know you mentioned a lot of different influences, and is there kind of one main theory that you follow, or one main idea kind of impinging that kind of underlies the leadership? Like, for example, one person's idea with leadership might be the concept that any leader really needs to know their own signature strengths and the strengths of their employees in order to be an effective leader. I mean, so like, is there any kind of, whether it's a theory or a general kind of organizing principle idea that really drives this? And I know you've it's clear that you have many, many underlying principles and ideas, but just trying to kind of simplify even more. So, yeah.
Sure. So let me take the first question first, which was, what is our definition of leadership? So we're trying to build leaders. We're trying to build appreciative leaders. We're trying to build leaders who come from a positive perspective, and we're trying to build leaders who see the strengths and potential in others. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. As you said, there's so much that underpins the work that we're doing here, but that's what we want. We want leaders who will inspire. We want people who will bring out the best. And that sounds so simple and so easy, but unfortunately, the opposite is often what happens in a big organization, because people are so busy, there's so much pressure and so many demands, that it's often, how do I get to the quickest endpoint the fastest, as opposed to going on the journey with the person. And seeing the benefits and the increased productivity that's going to come out of that method. So that's what we're trying to drive for leadership. Leadership is not a hierarchical statement. You can lead from anywhere. And, we see that, and we see that especially in matrixed organizations now. It's not about a title. It's about what you do and how you behave in your role, whatever that role is. And we'll see that increasingly as we roll this out to 15,000 employees. So that's what we're trying to get to. Positive leadership. I mean, the name really says it all in terms of what we are trying to, elicit out of our leaders. In terms of your second question, is there one or two fundamentals? No, there's not. There are key takeaways from each of the modules that we're doing, and yes, absolutely, things like understand your strengths first, then understand what your team strengths are as individuals, then understand what your group's team dynamic is, which is where we're moving to next, are key fundamentals. So for each of the modules, we have pulled out just a few things as the key takeaways that are in, people's workbooks, so they're not overwhelmed. with all of the information. And as I've said, the strengths component of all of the work that we're doing is absolutely foundational. So if people understand nothing else once they've gone through the whole program, we want them to understand that we want them to be a strengths-based leader. And that is absolutely foundational and fundamental to the work that we're trying to drive and the outcome we're trying to get to.
Great. Yeah, great answer and response. Thank you. Another question, in terms of the different modules, I know sometimes, positive psychology programs, like say in positive education programs in schools, there's often many different modules, and people often find that sort of a lot of things boil back down to the character strengths, or the character strengths weave into the different ones. I was just curious if you found that with sort of modules 2 and 3, like, do you find that people are still sort of talking about strengths in terms of the growth mindset, or I've often talked a lot about strengths and mindfulness and how those are interconnected. I mean, do those topics kind of come up, or or is it kind of they really separate, almost silos?
No, they absolutely do come up, and we've done that intentionally. I mean, we find that strengths more than any of the others weaves itself through organically, through the other modules, and we find that our people. Yeah, absolutely. Talking about mindset, and they'll talk about their strengths and how that applies, or an example for how they've gone and, tried to do something. We also find that, we're talking to people around, changing habits and changing behaviours. Come back to your strengths. What are your strengths? How can your signature strengths help you to become more mindful, or, focus on your energy, as examples. So, no, absolutely. We've tried very hard to weave all of the modules together so that there are linkages, but the strengths module does apply itself more readily to, to that, we have found, and that people are they're taking it. One of the things that we found very strongly from executives all the way down is that this is changing people's lives, not just changing how they show up when they come to work every day. And the amount of stories that we're hearing about things people are doing differently at home, things they're doing with their kids, doing the strengths questionnaire with their kids at home, having a different conversation about the report card when it comes home. And we know that research that, that Marcus Buckingham talks about around going to the S instead of the A. It's had a profound impact on people's lives, not just how they show up at work. So yes is the short answer. That was the long answer.
Great. Is there any quick story or example that you might offer in terms of, a particular leader who transformed because of focusing on their strengths, or somebody that maybe you kind of witnessed personally that kind of was a pretty poor leader or just not very effective, and that through the strengths work really sort of transformed or grew? I know that's kind of a loaded question to say give us a whole case story, but is there any little brief snapshot story you might be able to offer sort of for people to walk away with?
Look, there's so many, and we're actually about to do a video for VIA that will have myself, a manager and an employee talking about this. So that's coming up in July, which will be great from a stories perspective. Look, there was one leader that I witnessed over the course of the last 18 months who used to be quite negative, used to be, through nature of this person's role, very pragmatic, but would also always go to the problem, because that was the nature of the role that this person was in, and was quite, quite confronting for people. What I have seen this person do over the course of, understanding the program, working with the strengths, understanding mindset, positive emotions, etc., has changed so dramatically in terms of the dialogue that this person has, the approach this person takes to people, the management style that this person takes with their people. And just, I'll give you one very simple example. In meetings, in IBM, and I'm sure this happens everywhere else, you get into the meeting, you immediately get into the business of the meeting. and it's often, the topic is often what's wrong, where are we at, what's the current state, what needs to be fixed, where do we need to get to. This person very, very quickly after doing the strengths module and the other development now starts every meeting with number one, positive news, so something positive that's happened in the business. We'll highlight the strengths of a team member or something that's happened, and we'll do a quick go around in the room for positive stories. And where people can bring their strengths into that, more the better. And again, this sounds very simple to do, but the impact that has had has been quite phenomenal. So that's one team member's example.
That's a really great example. I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, that like you said, it does sound simple, but but and I know that people just don't do it. The majority of people do not lead that way and do not take that approach. So it's a lot more complicated than it sounds, and yeah,
it is. And when you have different members of the team changing their behaviour, and then you bring those members of the team into an executive team meeting, you watch the conversation change because the questions change. And when the question changes, everything changes.
Right.
So, you can often wonder, how do you drive, how do you make this change happen when in such diverse businesses, in such big businesses, or in smaller businesses that are complex, and it starts with individual behaviour change. And if you can get that happening, get the coalition of the willing happening, get to that tipping point where others start to come along for the ride, phenomenal things are possible. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. One final question, if that's okay?
Sure.
What about your personal strengths and how you have used those and rallied those, leveraged those to do all of the really incredible, innovative work that you've just described? How have your your strengths, your signature strengths, played a role? How have you leveraged them?
Great question. So it was really interesting for me when I first did the strengths years and years ago. The aha moments that it had for me in terms of, the journey that I was on, where I'd been, where I was going, why I was doing the types of things that I was doing. It really gave me the explanation for that. So some of my strengths, my top strengths, curiosity, creativity, love of learning, judgment, critical thinking, and gratitude. They're my current top 5. So when you think about that, think about the job that I'm in. I have 2 master's degrees, one in business, one in wellness with a major in positive psychology. I'm a voracious reader, especially in this space. And I drive business strategy for a very large organisation. When you bring all of that together, for me leading this work, my curiosity around all of this knowledge and learning and application, I think, has been a major driver. And when you put my curiosity together with my love of learning, that pretty much summed up for me why all these master's degrees and why this insatiable desire for knowledge. And then the curiosity and creativity of how do we apply that? How do I bring in something like this, which is untested, unproven in an IBM environment and many corporate environments? How do I bring that in and use my judgment and critical thinking to develop it in a way that will be something that will be supported and funded and, that people will give time, money, and energy to. So I think, those strengths were incredibly important. And I think the gratitude as an ongoing part of my process of being grateful for not only the organisation being on this journey and seeing the changes that are happening, but for me to personally have the opportunity to do this, which I just love so much, and that allows me to bring all of my other strengths into play every day, it's a phenomenal experience. So they've all been in there, Ryan, very actively.
it really sounds like it would have to be to do all the great work that you're doing. So that's great. Thanks so much. And I just want to thank you very much for being here today, Megan. It's been incredibly insightful and so much that I've learned. And so I look forward to hearing about all the wonderful feedback that you'll get on this. And it's just very clear to me that IBM Australia is one of the leading organizations in the world with working with strengths and trying to create more of a positive culture and a strength-based culture. And so much of gratitude to you for being able to do that, and hopefully many other organizations around the world will follow IBM's lead.
Oh, that's wonderful, Ryan. Well, thank you. Thank you to you and to Neil for all of the support, and thanks for the opportunity to share our story today. It's been great.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much, Megan, and we look forward to hearing more from you down the road.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.